Funk looked at the workers while they hurried over to the scene. The sound of all their boots crushing the soft sand was silenced by the sound everyone let out. It was like something out of science fiction. He couldn't trust his eyes. Was he really seeing it? What was sticking out of the rock was something that no one would believe unless you showed them. But what was this thing? It was a normal day at work for Sean Funk. He was an experienced miner with 12 years under his belt. He worked as a heavy machine operator, so he had seen plenty of lost treasure in all his years. More often than not, garbage was the thing that they found. But sometimes there would be something of value. Funk didn't think anything could surprise him these days, but what he didn't know was he was about to be proved wrong. Funk was ready for another day of excavating a millennium mine in Alberta, Canada. Funk was happy with his life. He had a job he truly loved. Nothing was better than working with your hands in nature. He really loved finding natural anomalies. Some called it an obsession. He really wanted to find one, but over the years he became more skeptical. But he had no idea today he was going to find what he wanted. Funk sat in the seat of his excavator like he did every day. The huge crane would shovel giant rocks from the ground into a pile. It was usual for him. Today was just another boring day, or so he thought. He was scooping a crevice into the earth so all you could see was mud and oil. As he scooped more of the ground's layers, he imagined that each layer was older than the last, imagining what could have walked on this soil. He remembered seeing something on the news about a miner finding an egg in the ground. He looked down at the hole he was digging and just saw sand. He smirked, knew there was nothing. He kept digging until suddenly his crane hit something very hard underneath the old earth. He had heard a loud cracking sound and wondered what he could have hit. Was it another rock? He raised the crane of his digger and swiveled off of his seat out of the cab. He looked at the rocks his crane had in its jaws. The rocks looked strange, so he transported them on his pickup truck to find out what they were. He then went back to the crevice he was busy digging. He looked at the damp hole, his eyes widening as he saw something that made his stomach tie into a knot. He sprinted to his cab and called for officials, co-workers, site managers, everyone. As he looked left and right, he noticed that there wasn't anyone close by. There was one digger that distance, working on its own soil. That was too far away. He had to act now. After finding the narrow crack that was widening, Funk grabbed a shovel from his truck and hurriedly started digging. He felt like a straw man as otherworldly energy came to him. Even with his newfound strength, he needed some backup. Funk knew time was of the utmost importance, so he started digging harder and harder. He didn't want the loose earth to shift over his artifact and bury both of them. He wasn't thinking. He was just digging. His intuition told him that he had to make sure nothing happened to this artifact. This was the most important thing right now. While he was digging away behind his prize, he heard something in the distance. The cavalry had arrived. Funk's backup, he had called, was on the scene. They'd brought an even bigger crane, so they took help to dislodge the anomaly. They dug below the artifact and put boards underneath it so it could be held steadily. After they had secured it tightly, Funk looked at it nervously as they began lifting it. Funk felt like this was his find and thus didn't want anything happening to it. Once the artifact had been lifting high in the air above the water Ettiman had stayed in, Funk felt his diaphragm relax. But he didn't know that he wasn't out of the water just yet. As the crane slowly lowered the artifact down to touch solid ground, everyone heard a sickening crack that made them all wince. The artifact broke in two, showing Funk what he believed to have seen the first time he stumbled upon it. A team from the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology rushed to the scene. Funk watched as their eyes popped in shock and amazement as they realized what they were called for. Funk explained everything, and they spent hours carefully digging through the shattered bits of rock, piecing together something you could only see to believe. What was it? Incredibly, Funk discovered a real-life fossilized dinosaur that had been petrified from its snout to its hips. This meant it was miraculously well-preserved since its death 112 million years ago. Not only did it have teeth and bones, but also its skin and remnants of its intestines. A phenomenon as rare as winning the lottery. How? Scientists speculate that the unlucky dinosaur died and ended up being swept into the river by a big flood. Not only did it have teeth and bones, but also its skin and remnants of its intestines. A phenomenon as rare as winning the lottery. How? Scientists speculate that the unlucky dinosaur died and ended up being swept into the river by a big flood. It was kept afloat by gases in its body, which washed its belly of carcass far out to sea. After a week or so, the carcass burst, and it sank back first into the ocean floor. Minerals seeped into the skin and armor and supported its back, which immortalized its form as tons of rock piled on top of it. Researchers from the museum and all over the world worked tirelessly for 6 years to test, preserve, and prepare this dinosaur's remains while piecing together his unbelievable story. Scientists concluded that this dinosaur was a 4-legged herbivore, covered in armor-plated skin and spikes with a long tail. It was a brand new discovery of species called a natosaur. In its petrified state, the natosaur weighed about 2,500 pounds, which gives scientists a reasonable idea of how much it weighed when it was alive. They estimate that the natosaur weighed in at around 3,000 pounds. This means that the natosaur would have been a fairly solitary creature when it roamed the land 100 million years ago. The miracle of the natosaur's perfectly preserved remains still baffles scientists, especially after its rough and long journey to its final resting place. Exactly how this preservation occurred was still a mystery to experts. All they were able to determine was that it had to have happened quickly, because the natosaur had lain undisturbed for millions of years after it had been covered by oil. Due to the natosaur's pristine condition, scientists were able to use modern X-ray scans to see what was inside the dinosaur's tough exoskeleton. They were able to see its bone structure and even inside the inner chambers of the beast's stomach. That's just how well preserved this find was. Nobody could believe it, least of all the men who found it. The natosaur is now on display at the Royal Tyrrell Museum, and scientists are still studying its remains as they continue to learn more about the prehistoric era of dinosaurs. As for miner Sean Funk, he gets to say that he played the leading role in one of the most significant dinosaur discoveries in the world at work. And scientists were still not done with this find. In early 2019, scientists were still studying the natosaur and its scans to continue to learn about dinosaurs in general, as nothing like this had ever been found before.